All right, everybody. This is a video to help you do your shading circles that we started in class. Some of us were not in class. Some of us were not able to have class. And some of you just might need to look at this again just to get you guys some help. So I'm recording this. I'm putting it on the YouTubes so you guys can watch it. So on Google Classroom, we have this worksheet of 8 different kinds of shading that we have been going over for the past couple of days. We did 3 on Tuesday, and most of us did 4 today on Thursday. But if you guys need extra help on that, we're going to go over this again. I'm just going to do a video going through each one of these circles that you can do. Now, the one you do, you can print this worksheet out if you want, or you can do what I'm doing. Trace a circle that you have laying around the house. If it's a bowl, a glass, a small lid, whatever works. Use whatever paper works best for you. It can be computer paper, lined paper, drawing paper. As long as I can see it, you're good. Write the technique that's on there and write a short description of what it is underneath so you know which one is which. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start doing this so I don't have this video be 10 hours long. So the first one that we went over was hatching. Hatching is a technique that's used by a lot of different people. And what makes it its own specific thing is that hatching is used to shade things when everything goes in one direction. So the lines are going to go in the same direction, and that's it. It's the only rule. So if I want to make a circle look 3D, the first thing that we've talked about in class is that I'm going to draw some sort of circle up here as a highlight. I'm going to color in everywhere but this circle. I am leaving this alone. And I'm going to make a little bit of a C shape down here. That's where all my darker shadows are going to go. If I look at this Christmas ornament, the light above me has a nice highlight here, and the shadow from my hand to the ground give a nice sort of C shape there. That's way darker than any other part of it, except this right here, which doesn't count because there is a web camera in the middle of it. So we want to go and make this look good. So I find that making lines diagonally is the way that works best for me. You might find that going up and down might be the easiest way for you. So you can see what I wrote here. I'm going to choose to make my lines go in the same direction, but up and down, so you can see what this says. Doesn't mean you have to do it. You can go across, you can go diagonally. It's up to you. So I'm going to color in this whole circle using straight lines. Kind of looks like the Death Star. Fill in all the space of that circle except for this bit right here, which we leave alone. Right now, this does not look 3D. It's just a circle with stripes on it. But as I overlap and make these lines closer to each other, already with me just going over this a second time, this part down here looks way darker than this. Now to blend that in to make it look really nice, I'm just going to keep on adding lines until it sort of fades into each other so it doesn't look quite as sort of flat. So if I make my lines really close to each other, you can even press harder on your pencil and keep going. Just do this until you think it looks all right. It will really just be, you know, however long it takes you. Everyone does this differently, but your only rule is that your lines have to go in the same direction. So when you think it looks ready and done, you're good to move on to the next one. But hatching, again, all your lines are going in the same direction. Doesn't matter which direction, but they all have to follow each other. So now that is a pretty 3D looking sphere. All right. The next one is crosshatching. Crosshatching is similar to regular hatching, except those lines can go in different directions. A lot of people like using this. I find it to be a little quicker than doing this. So if I wanted to make this circle into a sphere, the first thing I'd start with is I'd make a little circle up here. I'm going to leave this alone because I don't want to color that in. I'm going to make that sort of C shape on the bottom. This is where my shadows are going to be. So I might start this one out by making up and down lines like I did on my hatching one. The difference is when I want to create darker shades on here, I get to go in a different direction if I want to. So If I want to make the shadow darker, I might choose to make some diagonal lines in this shape right here. And because my pencil's overlapping other lines, it instantly looks a lot darker with very little effort, okay? I can choose to bring that out a little bit with more diagonal lines if I wanted to. I could decide that going, without bumping into anything, going sideways, sort of horizontal lines, that might be something I want to do. And you do that until it starts to look more 3D. So I might go back to diagonal lines because then you can still see what I wrote underneath of it to make that darker and look more 3D. So you do that until your circle is no longer a circle, but it's a sphere. This is a way that people shade certain things in. Maybe if you want something that has a certain kind of a texture, this is the shading that you would like to use. Think of it like shading using hashtags. The world's most complicated tic-tac-toe board. There we go. That is cross-hatching. Hatching goes up and down or side to side, diagonal, one direction of the line. Cross-hatching, those lines can go wherever they want. So, scooting on along to number 3 of 8. Scumbling, one of the best words ever to appear in the English language. Scumbling is essentially scribbling with a purpose. So when I scribble something on my paper and it looks like a mess, I can use that same technique to make that into something that I can shade with. There's not a whole lot of overlapping lines on this mess I've made right here. However, if I just keep going like I'm a doctor writing a really messy signature, this looks way darker than this. I can use this to create shading in something that might have an unusual texture. For example, like a dryer ball. So these are meant to pick up lint and things in your dryer, but this has an interesting texture. So if there's ever a day I feel like I really want to draw a dryer ball or something that has this texture, scumbling might be the technique I want to use. So make this look 3D, make that circle up there so it's left alone. Make that C shape on the bottom so we know where our shadows hang out. And I am going to start by making a squiggle and have my pencil sort of go in any direction my hand really wants to let it go in. I'm not pressing super hard, but I am kind of making a mess on my paper. But there's a method in my madness, just like Hamlet. So the closer and more overlapped my scribbles become, as they are starting to in this C shape, you can already start to see that this sort of hairy eyeball looking thing is already starting to look a little more 3D. It is messy and fun, and it's turning into the thing I want it to. Some people use this kind of texture if they want to draw something like wool, or if they want something to look a little busy or like it's moving. I use this if I'm drawing something like moss or, you know, a plant that's really far away. I don't want to draw a million leaves, so I might draw something that looks a little scribbly so people say, oh, there's a lot of detail on there, even though I can't see it. I'm getting that impression or that vibe due to the way that they shaded that in. So it's a quick way to shade things. There's really no wrong way to do it as long as it looks 3D in the end. You can't go wrong with a scribble. You can't go wrong with scumbling. And it's a fun word to say. So that's that one. The next one I'm going to do, this is what we started on Thursday. This is called stippling. And because it will show up better on this camera, I'm going to do this with a marker. So stippling is a really cool way to shade things in, but it requires a lot of patience. The result ends up looking really interesting, but it takes a long time to do it. So if you're not a very patient person, this might be the circle that you want to make the smallest. So maybe you find a lid that's a little easier for you for this. But the way I start all of these, draw that circle up there, maybe really light in pencil. We know to leave that alone. Draw that curve on the bottom. We know that's where our shadows are going to hang out. So stippling is shading using only dots. So using my wonderful marker. If I create a bunch of dots that are really close together, they have the impression of making something darker than if those dots weren't hanging out so close to each other. So I know it's way easier to add dots than to take them away. So when I start this, I am probably gonna keep my dots a little bit farther apart to make one sort of kind of fill up my space, but not too close together. I can always add more. Right now, this looks like a really weird donut, like a donut hole. Now I know that there's gonna be way more dots on the bottom here because that's where all my shadows hang out. Also note that I'm not stabbing my marker onto my paper. I don't need to. It's gonna make the same kind of dot no matter what. Now, as I'm starting to add some shadow stuff here with my little close together dots here, it's starting to show up on my paper as being a darker part of this sphere. Now, I could literally spend like half an hour on this, but I don't want that to be this entire video. So the closer these dots are together, the darker this looks. And if I want to blend it up into the rest of this sphere, so this doesn't just look like a circle that has a stripe on it, like a curvy stripe on it, I can start to bring those dots out a little bit into this more open area. Leave them still really sparse and spread out where your big highlight is, but have them just get gradually closer to each other wherever that shadow ends up being on whatever it is that you're drawing. If it's a sphere, if you are drawing a picture of, I don't know, a person, an animal, whatever technique you want to use this on when you decide to use it. People who do stippling as a way to shade their artwork, they make beautiful things, but it requires a huge amount of patience, as you can probably guess. Okay, now I'm going to stop doing this one because I'll be here forever, but you get the idea. Little dots, forever. All right, the next one's a bit of a mess, which I love. So I'm going to scoot this over so we can still see stippling, but we want to see the next one, which is called stumping. Not like a tree stump, but this is one you can do a bunch of different ways. You can use a tissue, you can use like a drawing stump, you can use your finger, you can use a Q-tip, you can use almost anything. And what this does is this is you are smearing the pencil around to make things look really, really smooth. So if I start this the way I always start it, leave a circle up here, leave that alone, draw that sort of C shape. Some people do this different ways. Some people have like an area of really dark pencil that they'll move their finger around in and then bring it to their object. I'm going to show you by putting pencil on this object and then smearing it from there, because that'll go a little quicker for us. So I'm going to put some pencil on this sphere, or what will be a sphere, because I need pencil to actually smear around. Okay, it's the only way it works. You have to have your ingredients before you can move them around. Okay, now because I know this is going to be way darker, I can totally just add some darker stuff down here. But I've got a bunch of white spaces and it looks a little scribbly. I want to make that look as smooth as possible. I am almost scumbling on this sphere, which I don't really want to be doing. Option one, use your finger. Make sure you don't eat potato chips or pick your nose before you do this, because you will make a mess. It works pretty well. What works better is a tissue. Just bunch it up. Please don't sneeze in it beforehand. And you can move it around on your paper. You can already see it's getting smooth. There's a line in there because there's a mat under my paper, but please ignore that. You can do that even better if you can find one at an art store, if you got one laying around. This is a stump. It's basically like a really tightly rolled up piece of paper. And this really smears that pencil all over the place. You don't have to have one of these to make this work, but it does make your job a little easier. You get a little more control if you use something like this than if you were using a tissue. Now, right now, this is a really smooth looking circle, but there's not a lot of shading in there. So that's when I can go back here, take my pencil, color a little more on the bottom here, wherever I need it to go. I'm kind of scumbling a little bit, kind of cross-hatching at the same time. I'm just adding pencil onto my object here. Okay, take my tissue, whatever I decide to use, and blend that in, and it looks really smooth and really nice. This would be a really good texture to use if you wanted to make something really smooth, like an ornament. The textures are really similar there. The only downside of this is that it's kind of messy. Your fingers get gross. You certainly go through a lot of tissues. And sometimes those highlights and things that you made or an outline you made, that pencil's going to go out of there. Not a big deal though, because you can just erase that out of the way. I can clean up my drawing really easily, and I can even erase that highlight back in there, and it's even brighter than it was before. Okay. Also, it is kind of cool because you can write like secret messages in there. You can write hello or hi. And if you got crumbs on there, you can use your hand, you can use a brush, like this is an old makeup brush, to brush those eraser crumbs away. All right. Number 6 out of 8. Blending. You've done this before in class. You did this when you did your complementary color spheres. So what this one is that you are using different pressures of your pencil to create layer after layer of however dark this needs to be. So if I press lightly on my pencil, it becomes one color. If I press harder on my pencil, it becomes another color. If I press really hard, it's as dark as it can go. That's essentially it, depending on how hard you press on your pencil. So starting off as we always do, circle up there, letter C shape down there. I'm going to just color this circle in with one sort of gray color of my pencil. I'm not pressing very hard because it's a lot easier to go darker when you're shading something in than it is to go lighter. It's always easier to add than take away in this circumstance. So this is all one color. This isn't 3D yet. This is an eyeball looking at us. So if I want to make this darker using really any of these other techniques, essentially, if I just press harder on my pencil, whether I want to go up and down, maybe kind of crosshatch a little bit. If I want to go in the same direction, just regular hatch. If I even want to scumble a little bit, kind of just make a little bit of a mess. The harder I press on my pencil, the more that blends together and the more this is starting to look a little more 3D. Okay. This is something people do a lot when they use things like crayons or pastels or colored pencils, especially. Now, depending on how smooth you want this to look or how dark you want it to look, you just kind of mess around with it until it looks good. There is no specific technique that I've used on here that you could point out. This is just blending together. There's a little bit of scumbling in here. There's a little bit of cross hatching. There's, a little bit of regular hatching, I suppose. But it's blended together. And again, there's this orange mat under here, so there's a little bit of a stripe. So maybe this is just a Pokeball now. But that's number 6. These are all ones that we've learned in class so far. And whenever one you need to look at more, pause the video and replay it however many times you need to. The last 2 are, where's my paper? Here we go. Circling and contour line. Contour line is something we'll be doing in class on Monday, but I'll put it in this video anyway because it is a little complicated. It's not so bad with a circle. It's much more complicated on other things. Circling, not to be confused with scumbling, is when you take swirls or circles and you shade like that. Now, when you're scumbling, you're going in every sort of direction. You're like scribbling because you're almost mad about something without actually being so. Circling, you're making little circles, little spirals, whatever you want to call them. When you see like little stick people with like little silly curly hair, like really simple stuff. The letter E if you're writing in cursive, if you're like typing out what a dolphin would say. That's what dolphins say, they go E, 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 E. That's how you would shade this in. So as I always start, make that circle, leave it alone, make that C right here, it's gonna be real dark. And like scumbling, it's pretty quick. So I'm gonna make a bunch of circles and swirls. They're all kind of making the same shape. It's kind of the same design. It's like my hand's been possessed by a very small tornado. And the closer these loops become, the smaller they become, and the more they overlap, just like with Scumbling and just like really any other kind of shading we've done so far, the darker they appear to be. So the more 3D, the more sphere-like this looks, the more work you add to it. Okay. Again, this is something that's going to give you maybe a certain kind of a texture. This might not be a shading technique that you like using all the time, but it's cool to have in your sort of artist's toolkit to go back to whenever you feel like you want it. And there you go. Kind of looks like a bubble, like a soapy bubble, a bubble with other little bubbles on the outside. And last, but very certainly not least, contour line. Contour line is tricky because this is something that is a little bit like hatching. It's a little bit like blending in the way that you are sort of literally sculpting this flat shape into a 3D shape by the direction that your lines are going in. And what I mean by that is that if I've got a circle, think of it like a ball. If I want to make this look 3D by just using lines and very little actual shading, I'll make that circle up here. I'll make this line down here. But in the same way that when you look at like a basketball, pretend Miss Wales knows what a basketball looks like. I clearly don't. You guys know what a basketball looks like. I apparently am terrible adult. But in the same way that the stripes go across there, you can go and make curved lines around a circle that follow the shape of that circle and look like that. What this looks like to me is like a cartoon eyeball. Like, hello, here are my veins. I'm very spooky for Halloween. Put me back. And you can do that. And wherever you want this to look darker, you make those lines a little thicker, or you just keep adding them in there. So you can kind of see how it's a little bit like hatching. It's a little bit like cross-hatching. And you can add those lines in really light to get that sort of middle color in there. Okay. Kind of looks a little bit like a very scary hot air balloon. I would not feel safe in here. But you do that, and that's kind of like a contour line. This is easier shown on something that isn't just a sphere. So before I end this video, I want to show you this in actual practice. So we've learned about 8 of these today and over the course of 3 classes. So if I've got all these frogs here, if I look at them from far away, they all have shading, they all look pretty good. They all appear to be 3D. But they all also look very different when you look at them up close. So hatching, we learned that all of those lines are going to go in the same direction. That's going to give you a very specific way to shade this. Cross hatching, those lines are going to cross each other, the cross there, different directions to give you that specific kind of shading. Scumbling, you're making a bit of a mess. You're kind of scribbling to get this looking like it's 3D. We've got shadows, we've got light areas. It works, even if it's a bit of a mess. Stippling takes a lot of patience, a lot of little dots. It's very difficult to do that and not sort of get frustrated with the amount of time it takes, but the results look really cool. Stumping, which is the tool I'm using right now, you're smearing that pencil, that colored pencil, that pastel, whatever sort of smearable material that you have into making it look incredibly smooth. Great for fog, great for clouds, great for smoke. Blending, a little similar to stumping, but you still get sort of the texture of the pencil in there. You're pressing on your pencil with different layers of sort of hardness on there to get a specific kind of look. Circling, lots of little swirls forever, not to be confused with scumbling, which looks a little more chaotic. This has a different specific texture to it. And last but not least, contour line. You can see how this works a little better on a more complicated object like a frog. So you can kind of see how its leg shape has been shaded by following how this would look in 3D. It's a little bit like sculpting with an actual pencil line. So where there's a shadow, that line gets thicker. where there is a darker space. It might even be almost all the way colored in. And then there was just an extra frog. He doesn't have anything going on. He's very sad. He's a very boring frog. Sorry. But that is that. So if you needed asynchronous learning help, if you wanted to go back and check these out, if you wanted this as reference, we've done a bunch of these in class, and now you have it on the internet forever. So I hope this was helpful, and happy sketching. If you're in my class, you have 8 of these to do. They will be due at the end of next week on December the 12th, 2020. If you're just watching this because you came across this video, good for you. I hope you learned a thing. You're not in my class, but you can pretend to be. So see you later. Enjoy, and goodbye.